Hey guys, how's it going? As you know, this week you're supposed to be reading Act 2 in Julius Caesar. This is going to be as quick as I can go, but a summary over Act 2. It should probably be about 20 minutes, just like last time. If you have any more specific questions, you can reach out to your teachers. I'm going to be looking through Shmoop and kind of summarizing what's going on as we're going. So Act 2, Scene 1. So the beginning, we see Brutus is thinking about the conspiracy in his garden. He thinks really late into the night. He's obviously kind of torn between it. He has reached the conclusion that Caesar should die. He can't justify his death by personal acts, but he just decides that Caesar needs to go for the public good. He is thinking, he goes, well, although Caesar isn't bad now, getting a crown would change who he is if he became king. So he's seen no evidence that ambition would change Caesar, but he thinks we probably shouldn't take the chance on it. So Brutus decides that the action has to be taken as soon as possible, and Caesar's kind of like a serpent's egg that once it hatches, it'd be dangerous. So while doing all that and thinking, Brutus sends his servant Lucius to light a candle, and Lucius returns with a letter that he found. It was from Cassius. Remember, Cassius was writing letters, fake letters, to send to Brutus. And the letter says that Brutus should recognize his own noble nature, do something before Rome falls into tyranny and has a king and all that stuff. So Brutus is taken in, and then he promises that he promises for Rome that he's not going to fail. So Lucius confirms. He goes, tomorrow is the Ides of March. It's March 15th, which is that day that Caesar was warned about. So there's a lot of foreshadowing going on for us. And Brutus admits that he's been kept up since Cassius planted the fear of tyranny in his mind. So Brutus hasn't been able to sleep. He's been freaking out. The group of conspirators then shows up at Brutus's door to win Brutus over. They're all looking kind of shady, and they are wearing disguises and stuff. And Cassius introduces all of them, and Brutus says, hey, come on in, you're all welcome in my home. So Cassius pulls Brutus aside while they're all discussing. And he's going to tell him exactly what's going on when the sun rises. So Brutus steps forward. He wants to hold everyone's hand for, I don't know why that they're all holding hands, to talk about their murdering plan. Cassius thinks he wants to swear an oath to the cause, but Brutus says, no, we don't want to do that. He's violently against it. They're Romans. Romans don't do oaths. They're just true to their word and stuff like that. So don't even mess with oaths. Then they all decide to have a little bit of a debate about whether to include Cicero, but it was decided that he'd never been a follower and shouldn't be invited to join their conspiracy. Also, it's important to note that the minor conspirators were easily swayed one direction or the other regarding whether Cicero should be asked to join. At first, they're like, oh, yeah, he'd be great. And then they're like, oh, no, he's totally unfit. So obviously, they're really easily persuaded. Cassius also then suggests that they also kill Antony, who's Caesar's young friend, while they're at it. Sorry if you hear any whining in the background. The dog is freaking out, whining. So Brutus disagrees. He thinks that'd be overkill to get rid of that guy. Like, what? We're going to look like we're crazy. Indy, come here. So he talks about how they should murder Caesar nobly, carving him up like a dish for the gods, not a carcass, and all. It's weird stuff. And the conspirators think of should think of the murder as an act of sacrifice for the state, not like a bloodbath. Brutus also contends that since Antony is like Caesar's arm, once they kill Caesar, Antony will be powerless. An arm without a head can do nothing. Brutus is sure they will have nothing to fear from Antony. Trebonius is another conspiratorial lackey. Wow. He suggests that Antony will be sad after the murder and will eventually laugh about the whole thing, which kind of makes us wonder how well Trebonius really understands people. So the clock strikes 3. Actually, there were no clocks in ancient Rome, but Shakespeare didn't care about that. It's more about the drama. They agreed to part, and before they do, Cassius points out that Caesar's been cautious because of all the bad omens and everything. So he's worried that Caesar's prophets might convince him to take a sick day. Decius tells everyone not to worry, that he'll show up at Caesar's place to make sure that Caesar goes to the Capitol and gets there. He can sway Caesar easily with fairy tale interpretations of whatever worries Caesar, all that stuff. Everyone's going to meet at Caesar's to make sure he shows up at the Capitol for murder. It's a team effort. Cassius prompts them to be good guys, good Romans, keep their word. So Brutus tells them to make sure they don't look like suspicious murder. Hey, let's not look like we're going to murder the guy. Let's just look normal, act casual. So after everyone leaves Brutus, his wife Portia, whom he left in bed, shows up to have a little spousal chat. And the other night, Brutus gave her a mean look and dismissed her when she wanted to talk about what was bothering him. She knew something was going on, and he was didn't want to say anything. So Portia pleads with him to tell her what's making him so unhappy. He goes, I'm just sick. And Portia says, you're pacing all about. It's not the best cure, and points out that sickness of the mind might be what plagues him. So she says she has a right to know who the masked men were at the house in the middle of the night. She does more than simply serve him. She asks that he confide in her as his beloved wife rather than ignore her like a kept woman. Though she's a woman, she's his wife, daughter of noble Cato. She can keep a secret no matter what it is. All that stuff. She's like, just tell me what's going on. I need to know. So Brutus asks the gods to make him worthy of such a wife, and then there's a knock at the door. He tells her to go back to bed, promising to tell her everything later. Caius Ligarius, a guy who he's someone that one of the conspirators wanted to bring onto the team. He shows up, although he's sick. He says he's filled with the Spirit after hearing of the killing pain. So they kind of take a walk and they talk about murder together. All right, scene 2. Caesar's also up late. He's walking around. He doesn't know what's going on. His wife Calpurnia cries out, "Help! Oh!" They murder Caesar 3 times in her sleep. Which he goes, this is a bad sign. So he tells the servant to order the priests to make a sacrifice and see if they can rustle up a good omen. The now awake Calpurnia approaches Caesar and demands that he not leave the house that day. Of course, Caesar's like, no, I'm going. He thinks he's basically that danger can't even look at him. Thinks he's better than that. So Calpurnia is dead set against him leaving. She's not super superstitious. She's not a superstitious person. She's probably just a little bit superstitious. Office reference. But she's seen the lions walking around, the dead rising from their graves, and the warriors in the sky. And she's also dreamt of the Capitol covered in blood. So it all is actually making her worry. So she's a little bit stitious about that. Caesar points out that the gods will get in their way no matter what he does. He delivers the famous line, cowards die many times before their deaths. Valiant never taste of death, but once. He sees no reason to fear, since fear death, since death comes to everyone in the end. Caesar gets the word that the sacrifice did not go well. The beast they killed didn't have a heart. And Caesar may be arrogant, he may be brave. He takes this to mean that he would have no heart for courage. If he stayed home today, he claims he's more dangerous than danger itself. So Calpurnia pleads with Caesar to stay home. If anyone asks, he can say it's his wife that kept him home, so he won't look like a coward. He doesn't agree, and then she gets on her knees and begs him. And he decides to humor her and have Antony cover for him and make up some excuse about feeling ill or something. So in the morning, Decius shows up as promised to take Caesar to the capital, and Caesar tells him he's not going. He says he's not going to go. And Calpurnia adds that Decius should tell the Senate that Caesar's sick. Caesar points out that he's conquered nations and is not worried about some old senators knowing why he had to stay home. So Caesar tells Decius to just tell the Senate he won't come. They don't deserve any more of an explanation. And still, Caesar says because he loves Decius, he'll tell him the real reason he's staying home. Not a good move, right? So he confides in Decius that Calpurnia had a dream that Caesar's statue poured blood from 100 spouts like a fountain, and that the happy Romans surrounded the statue, bathing their hands in the blood. And Decius, being a quick thinker, he knows he's got to get Caesar to the capital so they can kill him. He deliberately misinterprets the dream. He says that, of course, Caesar had blood spilling all over happy Romans. He claims that the dream meant that Rome would be revived by Caesar's blood, and everybody will want a little bit of that wonderful infusion. He means that Rome will be sustained by Caesar's blood, is what he really means, but he says it'll revive them. And then to end all of discussion on the topic, Decius offers Caesar the cherry on top, saying that the Senate is planning to crown him king. And if he doesn't show up, they might change their minds, and they'll make fun of him for being scared of that and staying home because of his wife's dreams and stuff like that. He claims that he only tells him those things out of love. And so Caesar takes the bait, calls Calpurnia foolish, and heads off with Decius to the capital. It's 8 a.m. by that time, and all the other conspirators have gathered at Caesar's house to make small talk as promised. Caesar invites them all to have a friendly morning drink with him before they go, and then Brutus privately laments that Caesar can't tell that his supposed friends are his soon-to-be murderers. All right. Scene 3. This is super short. Artemidorus, who's a soothsayer, reads himself a note out loud that he's written to Caesar. In the note, he lists all the conspirators that Caesar should stay away from and warns of their plot. He plans to pass the note to Caesar as he walks to the capital, and he hopes the note will save Caesar's life. And then scene 4. So Portia, Brutus's wife, is a mess. She tells Lucius, the servant, to run to the capital and yells at him for not leaving, even though she hasn't given him any instruction on what to do when he gets there. So Portia's worried, but she doesn't even know what Lucius should look for. Brutus didn't look well when he left the house in the morning, and she decides that Lucius needs to go look after her husband and see what Caesar's up to and who's surrounding Caesar. But she hasn't heard the murder plan directly from Brutus, but she still thinks that something awful is about to happen. So then Portia starts with a fright, thinking that she heard a noise, even though Lucius claims that he's heard nothing. So another soothsayer, there's a lot of soothsayers back then, he arrives at Brutus's house to tell Portia that Caesar hasn't come to the capital yet. The soothsayer hopes to meet him on the way there with an offer to befriend him. So Portia worries about this and asks whether something is being plotted against Caesar, and why does he need more friends? The soothsayer says he hasn't heard of anything, but he is scared that something will happen. The soothsayer heads off in hopes of finding a place to speak with Caesar himself, and to not be crushed by a crowd. Portia grows even more faint. She asks that heaven speed Brutus in his enterprise, worrying that Lucius has overheard her. She covers herself with a paltry lie, pretending that the enterprise is some small request that Brutus had made that Caesar won't grant. She knows something, and she's not saying what. So finally, Portia tells Lucius to tell Brutus that she's Mary, and that she'd liked Lucius to bring back news of Brutus. She clearly is not Mary, and she seems to expect the worst. So that's the end of Act 2. Y'all make sure, if you have any more questions about it, you ask your teacher, essentially. This is the short version. Act 2, Scene 1, Brutus gets swayed by the letter that arrives, and he meets with the conspirators at his home, and they plan to kill Caesar. Scene 2, Calpurnia begs Caesar to stay home from the Senate. He agrees to do that, but then Decius convinces him to change his mind, and suggests that the senators plan to offer him the crown that day. C3, Artemidorus positions himself so he can pass a letter to Caesar warning him of the conspiracy. And then Scene 4, Portia has a conversation with the soothsayer and learns that he intends to wait along Caesar's route to warn him of the ill omens. All right. Y'all stay safe. Make sure you're washing your hands. You're not, you're practicing social distancing, all that stuff. It sucks to see that we're not going to be back at school this year, but hopefully we'll be back in the fall, and we'll get to see each other and all that stuff. See y'all soon.